Hey there, and welcome to the first video on my channel, Cut Twice, Measure Once. This channel is dedicated to projects I'm tackling around my house. You'll get to see all my mistakes along the way. I'd love for you to be part of the journey, and feel free to chime in with any suggestions for something you'd like to see me build. This first series covers a project close to my heart, building a custom playroom for my kids. The design on your screen is from a company called Grow. My wife and I started collaborating with them about a year ago, and I kicked off the actual work late last summer. After months of on and off progress, I finally wrapped up construction today, February 4th. I took all the sensory wall measurements, that play structure, and used SketchUp to design a full 2-story structure. We'll get to that in another video later on. And today we're starting with the climbing wall. We're jumping in a little bit mid-construction, but I'm excited to show you how it's coming together. Now, let's get to work. These are some panels of 3/4 inch plywood that I've prepped earlier. You saw a bunch of T-nuts on the back of that. That's to attach some rock climbing holds to. And there's another panel that I'll be doing shortly that's going to have some climbing rungs mounted to it. I'm putting a 1/4 inch round over onto these with a router just to smooth off the edges so you don't get splinters. Now I am painting the panels that I just hit the router edges on. This will match the walls and ceiling for the room that they are going into. So as I was mounting this climbing panel and that hold there, I realized that the screws that the climbing hold attaches to the plywood with pull out under my weight. There's just not enough thickness to the 3/4 inch ply on its own for them to stay put. So right now I'm going to mark out all the screw locations for these handles, and then afterward I am going to be adding backing to the back side of this climbing panel, so we get about 2¼ inches of material for the screws to bite into. In the meantime, we can watch me start to install these bookshelves. I've already pre-done the installation before the walls were painted, so I've got all the holes, the drywall anchors already in place. Now I am on the back side of the climbing panel, just sanding down some of the blowout from the pilot holes that I drilled in there, taking a break from the climbing panel to start unwrapping all the rock climbing holds that I'm going to be putting onto the panels that you see behind me. I start off with the climbing holds here. As I'm going along, I realize for that bottom row that you see there and the top row of the climbing panel, I need to adjust the holds that I'm using a little bit, just so that they have a shallower depth of bolt that sticks out the backside, if that makes sense, because there is ledger boards right behind that part of the panel. Here I am doing my first test installation for some monkey bars. Everything goes well, holds my weight. Starting to prep all the monkey bars for the installation into the ceiling. I'm able to get them essentially all done here. You see that one little lag bolt that's sticking out on that second monkey bar. It was actually running into the screw that is holding up the blocking between the ceiling joists that these are attaching to in the attic. So I just have to go back into the attic and reposition that one structural screw so that the lag bolt from the monkey bar isn't hitting it. Here I am marking out some hole locations for another set of monkey bars that will be going perpendicular. I just do a couple of tiny pilot holes into the attic so that I am able to see where I am putting a new set of blocking for these. So not going to film the stuff in the attic. It's not exactly fun up there. It's hot, it's cramped, it's sweaty. Well, as expected, it was miserable in the attic getting that finished. Here you're about to see one of my many mistakes throughout this whole project. Getting the pilot holes drilled in for these monkey bars that are going across the foam pit that will be right below here. And first one goes through, no problem. It's on this one where I have a little bit of an issue. You see me starting to stare at that bolt a little bit, being like, huh, what's going on? Turned out the lag bolts that I had were a little bit too long. It was running into some of the mounting hardware that I had in the attic to hold that piece of blocking in place. I ended up just running it down to my local Lowe's, got, I don't know, it was like a inch-and-a-half long lag bolt or an inch-and-a-quarter long lag bolt instead of the 1.75 inches that they came with. I can't remember the exact measurements. Okay, so right now I am attaching backing to the backside of the climbing panel. That's going to go right up there. When I was testing out the installation earlier, discovered that when I put these climbing rungs on the front side of the panel, and the screws are only going through the 3/4 inches of the plywood for the panel, that they want to come out. Particularly, these are 7-inch deep climbing holes. There's a lot of torque being put through those 4 screws that are in each of these feet here. So I'm adding about 1.5 inches of backing behind each of those mounting locations for the climbing holes. I just took the same plywood that the climbing panel is made out of, cut it into small pieces, glued them up, so that's now about 1.5 inches thick, adding that to 3/4 inches of the climbing panel itself. We've got about 2.25 inches of depth there, so that you're giving much more room for the screws to bite into the material to really increase their pull-out strength. So earlier I glued up and attached these 20 blocks that go onto the back of the climbing panel, and now I'm doing a couple more that are sort of other sizes. I've got a grouping here of 3 that are really close together. So I've just got 2 large pieces I'm going to put next to one another, go onto the back side of that. And then there's a couple other spots where I need to have some smaller pieces, maybe 2 by 4 inches of backing material, because part of the screw holes are going to be going into these ledger boards, and then part of it will be going into the backing material that I'm adding. So I'm just going to get started on that. I've got my backing material. I'm just going to do some pilot holes and some 1 3/4 inch cabinet screws to hold them in place. What's great for those is that the screws are shallow enough that they're not going to punch through the front of this climbing board, and they've got a flat head at the bottom of the head, so that it's not going to pull into the material and also risk punch out on the front side of the climbing panel. Yeah, so just gonna get to it. After getting everything dry fitted, I started assembling my materials, a bunch of screws, screwdrivers, wood glue, and just started attaching all of these pieces of backing. It was about as tedious as you expect, so enjoy. After I finished with that glue up and let it starting to dry, I finished cutting up the ledger board pieces for that part of the climbing wall and switched over to doing some installation. I had done some setup before the room got painted, just remarking some of the boards. I think I had some measurements wrong, but nothing too crazy. Let me just say that this part was one of the harder aspects of this entire project. Just manhandling that whole board into place, getting it level, not dropping it on myself. It was a bit of a workout, But once it was up there, it felt really sturdy. Was able to get all the screws to attach it onto the ledger board. Finished mounting all of those climbing rungs and gave it a test run. Worked great, held me, no problem. That part's been up now for probably 3 or 4 months.